What if I told you that every subtle glance, every tiny half smile, and every carefully measured gesture a flight attendant makes during your journey isn't random at all, but part of a sophisticated, unspoken language that has been quietly developed through decades of aviation history? A secret communication system designed not only to keep hundreds of passengers safe, but also to maintain a sense of calm and control in a space where people from all over the world, with different moods, fears, and behaviors, are trapped together for hours in a metal tube soaring miles above the earth. Most travelers assume that attendants are only there to serve coffee, hand out pretzels, or demonstrate seatbelts. But in reality, they are highly trained observers and silent communicators who use a layered code of body language, micro-expressions, and physical cues to signal information that passengers will almost never consciously notice. For instance, that quick eyebrow lift you might catch between two crew members in the aisle is not just a casual acknowledgement. It can be a discreet way to signal that someone seated nearby is displaying unusual behavior that needs monitoring. That slight lean against the beverage cart, which you might mistake for fatigue, could actually be the agreed-upon posture that indicates turbulence is about to hit, or that service needs to be slowed down without causing panic. Even the way attendants stand at the boarding door with their hands folded or behind their backs isn't merely about looking professional. It is a quiet ritual of scanning each passenger, counting them while simultaneously evaluating body posture, eye contact, nervous tics or hesitation, and searching for signs of illness, intoxication, or even suspicious intent. This silent code is never printed in safety manuals, never openly taught in passenger-facing training videos. It is transmitted like folklore within the industry, refined through countless flights, passed down from veteran crew members to rookies, and adjusted constantly to account for cultural differences, flight durations, or even the type of aircraft being operated. Imagine this. When you see a flight attendant crossing their arms casually near the exit door, you might think they are just stretching or resting. But in many cases, that position is used strategically to disguise the fact that they are in observation mode, monitoring boarding passengers while also signaling to another attendant that the final security sweep is underway. Similarly, if you've ever noticed two attendants smiling a little too brightly while exchanging what looks like meaningless small talk during service, you may have unknowingly witnessed them executing a subtle check-in system where certain phrases or hand placements signal that a particular passenger needs to be quietly watched. There's a reason they say flight attendants are the eyes and ears of the cabin. They are trained to pick up on details you don't even realize you are giving away, reading your stress levels from your breathing patterns, your mood from the way you place your bag in the overhead bin, or even your state of mind from the tone of your voice when you order a drink. This silent psychological playbook is so advanced that attendants can often sense rising tension before an argument ever starts, stepping in with what looks like casual friendliness but is actually a calibrated intervention designed to diffuse conflict before it escalates. For example, if a passenger begins showing signs of agitation, restless foot tapping, abrupt seat movements, or repeated glances toward the crew, an attendant may lightly touch their shoulder, not just as a gesture of reassurance, but also as a way to establish dominance and control without raising alarm among surrounding passengers. And here's the fascinating part. This body language isn't universal. It is shaped by years of international flying, meaning attendants learn to adapt their signals depending on cultural expectations. In some regions, prolonged eye contact might be interpreted as confrontational, while in others, it conveys attentiveness, so crew members subtly adjust their cues mid-flight depending on the passenger mix on board. Behind the scenes, attendants are constantly decoding not only each other, but also you, the traveler. Did you know that when they greet you at the boarding door, they aren't just smiling out of politeness? They are scanning your body language, noticing whether you avoid eye contact, whether your shoulders are tense, whether you clutch your bag too tightly, whether your hands tremble slightly, or even whether your clothing reveals hidden objects or nervous perspiration. In that brief second of interaction, they make mental notes that can affect how you are monitored for the rest of the flight. And what's even more intriguing is how they communicate with each other without ever alarming passengers. A quick tug at their sleeve might signal that someone is showing signs of intoxication. A shift in how they hold the service tray could be a code to watch for turbulence, or a medical emergency developing in the back. A seemingly casual question like, "Is everything okay here?" directed at another attendant may actually be a prearranged phrase that means, "This situation is escalating. Be ready." The cabin is alive with these micro-conversations, and once you start looking for them, you realize that every flight is like a silent ballet, choreographed to keep order while appearing completely ordinary to the untrained eye. Think of turbulence moments. While passengers tighten their seatbelts in fear, attendants often keep calm with practiced facial expressions. But did you know their posture? Feet planted wider apart, knees slightly bent, one hand resting on a surface, acts as a signal not only to stabilize themselves physically, but also to non-verbally tell colleagues, "Stay grounded, stay alert." Even something as small as the way they distribute drinks has layers of meaning. If an attendant hands a beverage with both hands and maintains brief eye contact, it can be a signal of heightened attentiveness toward that passenger, perhaps because they've been flagged as nervous or at risk of fainting. If the same action is performed one-handed with minimal attention, and it may simply mean that passenger is seen as stable and routine. The artistry of this code is in its invisibility. Passengers are lulled into believing they are simply being served, unaware that they are also being assessed, managed, and sometimes even quietly tested. Here's a striking example that few realize. Sometimes attendants deliberately make light conversation with passengers who appear restless or nervous, not just to calm them, but to gauge speech clarity, smell for alcohol or drugs, or test whether the person is coherent enough to follow safety instructions in an emergency. And what about those discreet taps on seats you've probably ignored? A double tap on the headrest can mean, "Watch this passenger," while a tap on the aisle seat might mean, "This row is secure." Every move, every tilt of the head, and every quick glance is part of a system that most travelers never know exists. The hidden brilliance of this is that it creates a constant, invisible safety net. Without words, attendants keep each other informed, coordinated, and alert, while passengers remain blissfully unaware, thinking the only communication happening in the cabin is about coffee or chicken versus pasta. And yet, underneath the surface, there is a quiet storm of coded exchanges, ensuring that every possible risk is being managed before it becomes a crisis. What's even more remarkable is that this system extends beyond the cabin itself. During boarding, when attendants are greeting passengers, they often use small shifts of body weight or posture to signal to ground staff whether additional checks are needed, all without anyone around realizing. When passengers are deplaning, attendants may exchange subtle nods that indicate which rows to watch more closely for items left behind or passengers behaving oddly. The entire process is a continuous flow of unspoken alerts, signals, and reassurances. Now here's the part that will forever change how you see air travel. The next time you board a plane, and you see two attendants lock eyes for just a fraction of a second before smiling at you, ask yourself, are you witnessing a casual glance, or are you being quietly categorized as part of their hidden mental map of the cabin? The truth is, once you know this code exists, you can't unsee it. You'll notice the way attendants position themselves during boarding. You'll notice how they lean slightly towards certain passengers while pulling back from others. You'll notice the way their smiles shift when turbulence begins, or how their eyes dart to one another when a passenger raises their voice. And every time, you'll realize, this isn't random. This isn't accidental. This is a language spoken in silence, a code designed to maintain order in the skies, and a system so invisible that 99% of passengers will go their entire lives without knowing it exists. But you? Now you've seen behind the curtain. Now the next time you fly, you won't just be a passenger, you'll be a silent decoder of the hidden ballet playing out around you. And here's the final suspense. When you catch that fleeting glance, that subtle gesture, that quiet shift in stance, will you know exactly what it means, or will you realize that some parts of this secret language remain forever beyond the grasp of those outside the crew? That is the mystery of the skies, the unspoken code of flight attendants unfolding invisibly above the clouds every single time we take to the air. And from this day on, you will never look at your cabin crew the same way again.